The rain fell softly that evening, tapping gently against the glass window as Emma stared at her reflection. Her hands trembled as she smoothed the wrinkled fabric of the pale blue dress she'd borrowed from her neighbor. It wasn't her style, it was too fancy, too fragile, too far from the simple life she lived. But tonight wasn't ordinary. Tonight, she had a blind date. She'd almost cancelled. After all, what did she have to offer? Her hair was dull from too many night shifts, her shoes were scuffed, and she'd spent the last few years just surviving, working 2 jobs to pay rent and help her younger brother through college. But her best friend, Julia, had insisted. "Emma, you deserve a chance to feel seen again," she'd said. And so, with a hesitant heart and a borrowed dress, she'd agreed. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop downtown. Warm light spilled from its windows, soft jazz played inside, and the smell of coffee filled the air. Emma walked in nervously, clutching her purse. She spotted him right away, Daniel. He stood when he saw her, tall, with kind eyes and a smile that seemed to melt away the noise around him. "You must be Emma," he said, offering a handshake that turned into a slightly awkward laugh. "I'm Daniel." Emma smiled, though her heart thudded against her ribs. She sat down, trying to hide the slight tear near the hem of her borrowed dress. The first few minutes were polite, cautious. She stirred her coffee too much, and he tried to break the ice with light jokes. Slowly, the conversation began to flow. They talked about small things at first, movies, favorite places to eat, music, but then it drifted deeper. Emma found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her brother, how her parents had passed away, how she'd been trying to hold everything together. Daniel listened, not just hearing her words, but truly listening. His eyes softened with every detail she shared. He told her he worked as an architect, that he loved building things people could feel connected to. "I like to think I design spaces where people find moments of peace," he said. Emma smiled at that. "That's beautiful," she whispered. Time slipped by, and laughter began to replace her nervousness. But when a couple walked past them, dressed in designer clothes, expensive watches glinting under the lights, Emma suddenly felt small again. She tugged at her sleeve and glanced down at her old shoes, the self-doubt creeping in like a shadow. Daniel noticed. "You okay?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then said with a half laugh, "I almost didn't come tonight. I had to borrow this dress. I thought, maybe I wouldn't be enough." There was a long pause. Daniel looked at her for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. His voice was quiet but full of warmth. "Emma," he said, "you don't need fancy clothes to shine. You already do." The words hit her harder than she expected. No one had ever said something like that to her, not since her parents were alive. Her throat tightened, and for a second, she had to look away. He continued, his tone gentle. "You walked in here, nervous and real, and you've been more honest in 1 hour than most people are in a lifetime. That's rare. You don't need to impress anyone. You already are impressive." Emma blinked back tears, caught between embarrassment and relief. She smiled, finally letting herself breathe. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not for what she lacked, but for who she was. They talked for hours after that. The cafe's lights dimmed, the staff began to clean up, and still, they sat there, lost in conversation. When they finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The air was cool, and the city lights shimmered across the wet pavement. Daniel walked her to her car, hands in his pockets, still smiling. "Can I see you again?" he asked. Emma looked up at him, her heart calm for once. "I'd like that," she said softly. Weeks passed, and their connection only deepened. Daniel never cared about appearances, he cared about her laughter, her kindness, her resilience. One evening, he surprised her by bringing her to an old building site he was working on. "This will be a community center," he explained. "A place for people to feel like they belong. I thought maybe you'd like to help me design the inside. You have a good heart for spaces that feel alive." Tears filled Emma's eyes again, this time not from insecurity, but from gratitude. She realized she hadn't just found love, she'd found someone who believed in her. Months later, as they sat together on a park bench under the golden autumn leaves, Daniel reached out and took her hand. "You know," he said, smiling, You still haven't worn anything fancier than that blue dress. Emma laughed, remembering how nervous she'd been that night. I don't think I need to, she said. You already taught me how to shine without it. And in that moment, with the sun setting behind them and the world quietly fading into the soft glow of evening, she knew her life had changed. Not because of luck or fate, but because someone saw her for who she truly was. She'd walked into that cafe wearing someone else's dress, but she'd walked out with her own light. And from that day on, she never hid it again. The story of Emma and Daniel wasn't about wealth, beauty, or perfection. It was about seeing beyond the surface, about kindness and honesty, and about realizing that the simplest hearts often shine the brightest. In the end, she learned that love doesn't ask you to be more. It simply helps you remember that you already are enough.